Hi, my name is Corey Olson. I am the president of Signum University, and I am here to welcome you to the first session of our first ever Hobbit Immersion Camp. I am really excited about this. For those of you who have never heard of me or of Signum before, I've been running a podcast online called The Tolkien Professor for almost 10 years now. About 5 years ago, I published a book called Exploring J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. It's a chapter by chapter discussion for people who want to sort of go deeper into looking at what you can see when you stop and read The Hobbit really carefully. So I love The Hobbit. I have been a fan of Tolkien since I was 8, and I have read The Hobbit probably, I don't know, 50 times since then. I'm very excited to have our first ever Tolkien themed camp, our Hobbit Immersion Camp, and I am very honored to be joined by Ms. Binkley today, who is normally from Alaska, but is broadcasting today and will be throughout the camp from Rome. She is a school teacher who has been running a Tolkien sort of an elective class on The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings at her school for many years, and that was sort of the inspiration of our camp here today. Let me just start off though, giving a few technical instructions to make sure that everybody is on top of what's happening. The most important thing about your interface here, of course, you should be able to see us and to hear us, and now to see the first slide here for the Hobbit Immersion Camp. The most important thing on your little GoToWebinar control panel that you should all have there is a questions box. And if you enter things into the questions box, then we will see them right away in real time. Nobody else will see it, so you won't see the comments from other people. It's just a way for you to communicate with us and ask questions. And we want to encourage you. We want to very strongly to encourage you to ask questions and tell us your responses. So we'd love to see your reactions and your questions. We will be, I and Sharon Hoff, who's one of the other organizers of the camp, she and I will be responding to your questions and passing them on to Ms. Binkley, who will be addressing them in class as well. We can't promise to get to every comment and question that everybody makes, because there's a lot of people, but we'll do everything we can to do that. So anything that you're curious about, anything you want to ask about, go ahead and enter that into the questions box, and we'll be happy to either answer it or pass it along, and that'll be great. 2 quick reminders, sort of an organizational nature. First, for those of you who have not done this yet, we have a family registration and permission form that we really would like, if possible, everybody who's participating. So this is not for the libraries to use. This is for all of the individual families to use. So I'm just gonna put that right. It should appear right there in your chat box. So I'm sending that now. There's the link, the direct link. It's just a simple Google form, very short, but we do want to make sure we have official permission forms on file for everybody who's participating. We sort of taking the privacy and security of the kids participating in the camp really seriously, so we want to make sure that we get that. And another thing, for those of you who may want to watch the session again, or have friends who can't make it and want to be able to access the recordings of this after the fact, to watch it out of time sequence, this second link that I just posted to you there is the link to our YouTube channel. That's the Signum University YouTube channel. As soon as this first recording is complete, we will be posting it to the Signum University YouTube channel there, and there will be a dedicated Hobbit Immersion Camp playlist. So right there on the homepage, you should be able to see the Hobbit Immersion Camp playlist, and that's where it will be. It's not there yet because we don't have any recordings in it yet, but after this first one is made, it will be there. So very good. Okay, I think with that, that's all that I wanted to cover here at the beginning, and I'm looking forward to digging in and talking about The Hobbit with you. I may be back at some other times later. I might do some question answering as well. I might want to pitch in on some of the questions and stuff as we move forward, because it's hard for me to resist talking about The Hobbit. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand you over to Ms. Binkley. So thank you, Ms. Binkley.
Hi, everybody. Hi, campers and camp hosts. Welcome from sunny and hot Rome. I am so thrilled to be able to share this with you. I have taught The Hobbit in one form or another for over 10 years to middle school students. And it has always been an extremely popular class. And I've also taught other Tolkien books, like the entire Fellowship, little bits of the Silmarillion, depending on what the students were interested in. So today I would like to share to you a condensed version of this, and hopefully everybody will get really excited and move forward and explore all the other books. So, oh dear, here we go. I need to talk to you first a little bit about your journal. Now, your journal, you're going to be keeping that with your sketches and notes as you travel through Middle-earth with Bilbo and with the dwarves. Now, each page of your journal is going to have a sketching prompt for you. So what would I like for you to be thinking about drawing? And also a writing prompt. What would I like to have you kind of focus on for this particular chapter? And as you are drawing, I want you to really think about your own mind movie. As you're reading along, try to make pictures in your mind about what happened, what did they look like, what were the surroundings like, what were they doing, you know, what's happening here. And so get your mind movie going. I want you to be inspired by other artists, but I want you to use your own ideas to create your journal. I have found that over the years, students of middle school age are extremely creative. I mean, it just blows me away the things people have shared with me over the years. And then the slides are also going to have some references for you to take a look at for your writing prompts. Now, I don't expect you to write a novel. This is a camp, it's not a class, you're not getting a grade. So I want you to just kind of focus in on a certain thing and think about what was happening here. Now, the book that I am using, I'm going to hold it up here, hopefully everybody can see that, is this edition. And so my page references are for this edition. You do not have to use this book. If I say look on page 3 and it's not on your book page 3, look page 2, 4, kind of around in that area. Use the page numbers as a guide if you're not using this particular edition. So don't think that you have to have a special book in order to do this. So we're ready to start. So I'm going to read you this. Everybody's heard this. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Now, this is probably one of the most famous quotes in any English novel ever written. If you go anywhere in the world and say this even in English, people are going to know what you're talking about. That's how popular this book has become. This book was written over 75 years ago. The story is that Tolkien was grading tests. He was a college English teacher. And so he was grading tests, and people would write their answers in these little books. And he came to a page that was blank. And he wrote these words, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And everything sort of grew from there. The book, The Hobbit, was based upon bedtime stories he told his children. So as they were going to bed, they want to hear more stories and more adventures and things. And he incorporated that information into this book. One of the things to think about is how popular this book. There are over 100 million copies printed, and that was on the 75th anniversary, those numbers are from that. It's been translated in over 50 languages, and I do believe that people are working on translating it into even more languages right now. And this is all a story about a little person who didn't want to leave home, and it's become a worldwide favorite. And so I'm hoping that it's going to be your favorite too. Before we move off this page, I wanted you to take a look. This is one of Tolkien's very own drawings, and this is Hobbiton across the water. Let's just take a look at some of these things here. See, we have the river here. Oops, sorry. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my slideshow. I don't know why. I practiced today and it worked fine. Isn't that the way it goes? Here we have the mill. Now, remember, this is what they called an agrarian society. Agrarian societies were people who grew a lot of crops. One of the big crops that they grew, okay. Well, you guys are getting a preview of everything because I'll put itself on auto. Let me exit out of it and back in. See if that keep it from fussing at me. There we go. So this is where they would grind the grain into make, so they could make flour to make the bread. And here we have a grange. A grange is kind of like a communal hangout place. And then we have the road that winds up here past this area, which is called Bagshot Row. Now, Bagshot Row really doesn't happen to have a lot of information here in this particular book. As a matter of fact, Tolkien doesn't even mention the Shire in the book at all. That's not a word that he used. This was just where Bilbo lived. But here in this area is where his apprentice gardener lived. And that was old Gaffer Gamgee. And then the road comes up here, and here we have the little round door and the windows looking out over the valley below. Really, really a pleasant place. There we go. Now, one of our first tasks was to translate the title page. I love runes. And you should have had a rune decoder in your package. And if you take a look at this, I want you to pay close attention to these. There it goes again. Yeah, it has some kind of an auto thing on it. There we go. The dots, 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 dots. That's the separation of the words. If you take a look at the dots here at the very first one, there's not a dot at the end of that. The dot's all the way down here. So I hope everybody had a chance to translate that. Oh, I see a question here from Jubilee. And Jubilee, the book was written 75 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was in the 1930s, maybe 35 or 37. So we're going to take a look at our translations here. If you take a look here, this says, the Hobbit or there and back again, being the record, and then the dot doesn't come until after this D. The record of a year's journey by Bilbo Baggins of Hobbit, no dot there, so the dot doesn't come until here. Hobbiton, compiled from his memoirs by J.R.R. Tolkien and published, there we go, by George Allen and Unwin Limited. One of the things I really like about this title page here is that Tolkien didn't say he wrote this book. He collected, that's what compiled means. You collect all this information, and he got this, where did he get this information? From the memoirs, the things that Bilbo Baggins had written. He didn't write this book, he just collected it and put it all together. And I always thought that was kind of charming. So we're going to go ahead and start with chapter 1, The Unexpected Party. Now, here we have this really, really nice drawing of Tolkien himself. It's the hall at Baggins. So this would be the main door coming in. You see the big round door. If it was in color, the door would be green. And here's the quote. This one here, as you can see, is from page 3 in my book. So if it's not on page 3 in your book, that's okay. The door opened onto a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, very comfortable tunnel, without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The Hobbit was fond of visitors. So here is his visual and his words. So this is what Tolkien was seeing as he was writing. This is his mind movie. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at two fairly famous illustrators and their mind movie and what they did. The top one is by John Howe. And you can see he kept the tunnel-like look, but now it's really high and arched. And over here on the side, you can actually see pegs for all of those coats that everybody could put in there. I finally think I figured this out. Okay, may have to switch to a mouse. If you look at the bottom one, you'll see Bilbo there, and he is actually in his kitchen. He's in his kitchen or a pantry. And one of the things I like best about this is if you look back here in the very back, you can see that round door. So he is obviously on one of these sides that looks out over the valley. No going upstairs for the Hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, lots of these. Wardrobes, he had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor and indeed on the same passage. You know, Katie, I did not notice that there was not a Z on the room decoder until actually I was working on translating the title page. That was not something we did in my classes, was work on translating the title page. That's actually something that's unique to the Hobbit camp. And it took me a couple of seconds to figure this out. Bilbo was 50 years old when Gandalf came to visit him. Now, Tolkien also tells us that the best rooms were on the left-hand side going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set round windows looking over his garden and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. So he's up on that hill that we looked at first, looking down over everything. And so we have this one here. I like this image because it showed these windows here. So if you walked in, they would be to your left. And here we have Bilbo standing here in front of his big green door. I like this one for a couple of reasons. One, if you look here, it looks like it's much more rustic than some of the other pictures we will be looking at. And there he is standing around blowing a smoke ring. This is a clip from the Rankin Bass movie, The Hobbit, which I think just had an anniversary of some kind. I don't know how old the movie is, but it's quite old now, probably 50 years. So anyway, he's standing out here and he's smoking this pipe that goes all the way down to his furry toes. I love these furry toes. These furry toes were not in my personal mind movie, but whenever I saw these furry toes, I said, now, those are furry toes. And just a little note about the smoking of tobacco. That was something that was very cultural in Tolkien's group. Being a college professor, they all sat around and smoked pipes. And so for him, it was quite normal to be smoking a pipe. It was something people did to relax and to socialize. Here we have a couple more versions of Bilbo out here. And this time we have Gandalf included. I'll read the quote here. Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed. Gandalf came by. Gandalf. So let's first take a look at the house. We have a round door here. We have a round door here. Now, it says he was standing at his door. The artist here, in their mind movies, they had Bilbo sitting. That's perfectly okay to interpret something like that. Whenever you are reading this and you're making your mind movie, what you put into your pictures is what your mind movie tells you. So when these artists are drawing these things, they're reading the same story you are, and they are making their own mind movie. This one here I really like, the little white picket fence. My mind movie didn't have a little white picket fence, so I'm really fond of that one. This one over here, look at these big craggy mountains here. They're even snow-capped. I don't know that those really existed in close where Bilbo could just look out his door and see them, but this artist, in their mind movie, they had big mountains, so they put them in there. Now let's talk about Gandalf. He's pretty much as described. He's dressed in gray. He has the long beard, the staff, and he has the pointy blue hat. And you can see that both of these are artists in their movies. They considered that, they just took that into consideration and said, this is what he looks like to me. Someone has just asked, Katie, I believe it is Gandalf a human? That is an excellent question because he sure looks like an old man here, doesn't he? In The Hobbit, that's all we know him as, is a human who has a wizard. Now, we do know something about hobbits. They kind of have the ability to magically sort of disappear. It looks like magic. Is it really magic? But they can kind of just disappear when they need to. And Gandalf was a wizard who could do fabulous things with fireworks. We don't know if he is a human. We're assuming he is because he looks like that. As you read further into Tolkien's works, you get more information about who he is and where he came from. And In The Lord of the Rings, the entire book, if we were studying that one, we would be talking about where Gandalf came from and how he got there, and the fact that he is a type of a god. He's not an all-powerful, only god, but he's one of the lesser deities. So, but now in The Hobbit, we don't really know that. Oh, and people want to know what he smoked in his pipe. He smoked tobacco. Tobacco was something that came from the Americas to Europe and became a very popular thing for people to sit around and do. Like I said, I think people think it to be a social and a relaxing thing. So now we're going to talk a little bit about this thing here, that Gandalf. Gandalf tells him that he wants him to go on an adventure. Well, Bilbo gets all flustered and he says, no, I don't want to go on any adventures. Bilbo is half Baggins and half Took. His mother was Belladonna Took, and she was famous, and her family was famous for adventures. And his dad was Bungo Baggins, and he was famous for always doing the same thing, not adventuresome at all. So when Gandalf mentions to him, hey, I want you to go on an adventure, Bilbo says, I don't think so. There's nasty things make you late for supper. And he goes inside, and but he's polite, because remember, he is Baggins, so never very polite. And he invites him to tea next Wednesday, thinking, whew, got rid of that wizard. Don't want to go on any adventures. And then things start to happen. There he is minding his own business on Wednesday, and the doorbell rings, and he opens it up, and it's a dwarf comes in, and that's Balin. And then the doorbell rings again, and it's Balin. And the doorbell rings again, and it's Fili and Kili. And on and on and on. Until finally the doorbell rings so loud that Bilbo's angry. He rushes along the passage, very angry, altogether bewildered and bewildered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered. He pulled the door open with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarfs, 4 more. And there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his staff and laughing. Well, the dwarves here, notice this guy in blue on the bottom? That's the most important one. That's Thorin Oakenshield. I don't think Thorin's real happy about being welcomed into the house like that, but oh well. How old would Gandalf have been at this scene? Gandalf never had an age. He was just always looking like an old man. He never looked younger, but then again, he never really looked older either. He was kind of ageless. So he opened the door with a jerk. They fell in. And so anyway, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the dwarves. I have a little list over here because you can tell the groups of dwarves. This is one of the tricks that my students really liked, because then they could just rattle them off to their brothers and sisters and to their parents and aunts and uncles, and they were impressed. Listen to the ends of the names, and they're in groups. Balin, Dwalin, both end in that in sign. Fili, Kili. Okay, and then Dori, Nori, Ori. They all end in that E sound, the re at the end. And then there's Oin, Gloin. And then another family set, Bifer, Bofer, Bomber. And then Thorin, Oakenshield. He doesn't have to fit in because he's like the most important dwarf. You know, one of the mysteries about, I see a question here about the musical instruments. Apparently they were in the hallway. Tolkien does not mention the dwarves actually carrying them in, but he mentions that they go out into the entry hall, that beautiful entry tunnel, and they pick up their instruments and bring them back in. So anyway, the dwarves basically eat all the food in the house, and then they throw a singing party. And I think this one here is probably Thorin in the front, because Thorin gets a harp. And here we have the little confused Bilbo and Gandalf sitting back here with his pipe being all sorcerous. So he's listening to the song, and something Tookish woke up inside him. in Bilbo. He wished to go and see the great mountains and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls and explore the caves and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. This is one of my favorite lines, wearing a sword instead of a walking stick. How adventuresome is that? Declan wants to know what kind of abilities Gandalf had. In The Hobbit, basically, he could start fires and he could make fireworks. He apparently has some other abilities that we can find out in the Fellowship of the Ring. But in this book, his abilities mainly dealt with fire and actually persuading people to do things. So after they sing their songs, Gandalf brings out a map. Now, Bilbo really liked the maps. And we have two really nice ones here that were really important to me when I saw these pictures. I did not see any of these pictures when I first read The Hobbit. But this in my mind movie, when I was a kid, that he brought out a lamp with a red shade and he spread out the parchment that looked like a map. That red shade always stayed with me. So when I saw this image by Alan Lee with the red shade, and this one here by Ted Naismith with the red shade, I thought, wow, somebody else had that in their mind movie. And here we have a little Bilbo liking the map, and here we have an even younger looking Bilbo liking the map and all the dwarves around it. Now we're going to talk some about these rooms. I just was laughing at Amy's questions. Why did he let them in the house? Well, they kind of just came in. I think dwarves are kind of difficult to deal with. And besides that, you have to remember, Bilbo Baggins was very polite. He was serving tea. And he does mention that he knew it was his duty that if there were not enough cakes to go around for everyone, he would have to go without. So Gandalf points out that there's a rune on the west side and a hand pointing to it, and that marks the hidden passage to the lower halls. Okay, Jubilee is asking about Gandalf's beard. Jubilee, one of the things we really want to do is remember that you want to make your mind movie based upon what you're reading, not something that someone else has taken and interpreted. You want to make this your story and you want it to belong to you. This is your journey through Middle-earth with Bilbo and the dwarves. So if the book says that he has a white beard and you want to put a white beard on him, that's something that you've taken from the book and turned into your mind movie. If you want to take other influences for inspiration, that's also okay. I would never tell any of my students that, no, you're incorrect, because it is your own personal work. But let's take a look at the map now. There are a couple of things here that I want to point out on the map, and that's the first thing down here, these reddish letters we're just going to ignore for right now. But the hand, take a look at that hand. That hand always creeped me out. But this here is a D. That marks the secret door. Here's the main entrance. Here's the river running. Here's Dale. And here's the desolation of Smaug. Smaug, when he attacked, just didn't attack the Lonely Mountain. He laid waste to the whole area. I mean, he was formidable. And then the other thing that I really like about this map is if you look down here at the very bottom, here's where Mirkwood is, and it said, there are spiders. I thought, talk about an understatement. But now let's take a look here at Thor's map and these runes. Now remember, we're still looking at the dots. The dots actually signal the end of the word, not the break in the line. And also remember, no erasers. So let's take a look at this. Okay. It says 5 feet high the door and 3 may walk abreast. TH. Thrain, Thor. Thorin's father, Thorin's grandfather. And see what I meant about this here, the misspelled word? We know walk is not spelled that way, and we know they know how to make an A. But if you make a mistake and you don't have an eraser, I mean, think about if you were working on stone. Now let's talk a little bit about this type of things here. On every chapter, I will have for you a little bit of information about the journal drawings and the questions. The first thing I'd like you to do is sketch your idea of Bilbo's house. In your journal, your journey through Middle-earth, take all the information that you've read, all the information in inspiration from pictures you've seen, and draw Bilbo's house. It can be a sketch, it can be elaborate, it can be inside, it can be outside, just whatever impressed you. And the question to go with this one is, what is a hobbit? The next one is to sketch a dwarf. Now, you want to make sure that you draw what you think a dwarf looks like. We've seen lots and lots of images of dwarfs. Use those for your inspiration and decide how you want them to look. And then also, I want you to answer what the dwarves want Bilbo to do. Where is Hobbiton? Well, Hobbiton is a small town in what we will come to call the Shire in Tolkien's next set of books. Tolkien was asked to write a sequel about The Hobbit because it was such a popular book. People just loved the book. And so Tolkien had some ideas, and so he started writing another book, and Hobbiton then became a town in a small section of Middle-earth, which you might even call a country, and they called it the Shire. And did Gandalf play an instrument? I don't recall any mention of Gandalf ever playing any instruments. But that doesn't mean that he didn't. And so let's take a look at these things here so that you can see how we're going to do this. What is a hobbit? Now, if you look down here and you look around page 4 in your book, you're going to find this information. I don't want you just to copy this right in there. What I want you to do is kind of focus on reading this information and turning it into an answer that makes sense to you. They are or were little people about half our height, okay, so about half our height, smaller than the bearded dwarves, but they didn't have any beards. There's little or no magic about them except the ordinary everyday sort that helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large stupid folk like you and me come along. So take that information and answer the question. And what did the dwarves want him to do? Well, they wanted him to enter the secret door as a burglar. And they were not so sure that he was the man for the job. So they said they even expressed, nah, it seems more like a grocer than a burglar. And Bilbo didn't like that, so he said, tell me what you want done, and I will try it. If I have to walk to the east of East and fight the wild werewolves in the last desert. That's what Bilbo said. But then Gandalf, remember Gandalf picked him to go on this adventure. Gandalf says, if I say he is a burglar he is, or will be when the time comes. So those are the, so I will give you prompts and the page numbers, so to give you a jumping off place, so whenever you're working on your journal, you can go ahead and refer to pages around there and decide what you're going to do. It says here, okay, Lee has asked, why do all the pictures of Gandalf have the tall pointy hat? That is actually described in the book. And I think if you take a look around page 3 or 4 in your books, you will see that Gandalf has, they describe it as a blue pointy hat. And almost everyone has designed, oh, and it talks about the brim that comes out, way far out over his eyes. And just about every artist I've ever seen has made their own mind movie with a hat that looks kind of like that. I don't know that I've seen any of the others. Wild werewolves in the last desert. Well, this is a story from his father, Bungo Baggins, I believe, who seemed to know a lot about dragons and werewolves for a person who was staid and a homebody. Werewolves would be dragons. Okay, didn't work. Let's talk briefly now about chapter 2, roast mutton. What, oh dear. There we go. Okay. Now, some people were asking about where Hobbiton is. This is actually a picture of a puzzle. The puzzle lid from probably the mid-1970s. And here's Hobbiton here. Here's the Lonely Mountain here. They got to get from here to here. That's a long trip. But what we're going to do now in chapter 2 is talk about the first part of their trip, which is fairly uneventful until they get to this area right here. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So they're wandering along in the woods, down the road, all the way along, and it starts raining, and they're cold and wet and can't start a fire. And then one of the ponies falls in the river, and his baggage gets washed away, and Healy almost get washed away. And unfortunately, it is the baggage with the food. So they are cold, they're wet, they're hungry, and suddenly they see this bright light. Suddenly, the red light shone out very bright through the tree trunks not far ahead. Now it is the burglar's turn, they said, meaning Bilbo. You must go and find out all about that light and what it is for, and if it is all perfectly safe and canny, said Thorin. So they've got a burglar there. Gandalf's they don't even know what happened to him, but they got a burglar. So they figured, like, well, he's supposed to be able to burgle, so let's send him off burgling. And what does he find? He finds enormous trolls, 3 of them. Now, I put 2 different pictures here because this particular artist, their mind movie with trolls was nothing like I'd ever imagined trolls. And this particular artist here, I didn't imagine trolls looking like that either. But there are the 3 trolls there. And William turned around and grabbed Bilbo. Well, why did he grab Bilbo? Well, Bilbo decided that he was going to prove he could be a burglar. So he decided he's going to pick their pocket because burglars pick pockets. Well, he did not know that trolls' purses are the mischief. And so when he reaches in William's pocket to pull out the purse lets out a squeak and says, "Ear, who are you?" And they reach down, they grab him, hold him up by his feet, and William turned around at once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could duck behind the tree. "Blimey, Bert, what have I caught?" said William. "What is it?" said the others coming up. "Let me if I knows. What are you?" This is one of my favorite lines. "Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit," said poor Bilbo, shaking all over. And then the trolls, of course, think he's a burra hobbit. Okay, I'm going to take a quick moment here. I'm not sure that I actually understand this question from Amy. What is the height comparison between the humans and all the charters is that characters in the chapter? Gandalf would have been the tallest, and there are no humans. We haven't run into any humans yet, just dwarves and the hobbits. And Will wants to know if hobbits were more intelligent than us. Well, hobbits are a type of men, so I imagine they're probably just about as intelligent as we are. And did Bilbo know that the spiders were that big? Let's wait till we get to that spiders chapter. And was there a reason Tolkien gave the trolls more common-sounding names? Katie, I think that what he was trying to do was entertain the children, because these are actually pretty fearsome trolls. They are actually eating people. And so I think that Tolkien went out of his way to make them not as scary in their actions, because in their interactions with Bilbo and the way they sounded, so that kids and adults like me wouldn't get scared. So that's kind of my thoughts. So anyway, they decide they're going to cook for Mr. Baggins. Mr. Baggins is very small, and so they're arguing about how much of a meal they'll get out of him. And then he says these are really famous lines here. "Please don't cook me, kind sirs. I'm a good cook myself and cook better than I cook, if you see what I mean." Well, he was gone for such a long time that the dwarves went to see what was up. And the first dwarf appeared. Trolls don't like dwarves. Dwarves don't like trolls. And so they took a sack and popped it over the dwarf's head and tied him up and laid him to the side. And then as each dwarf came up and looked at the fire and the spilled jugs and the gnawed mutton, in surprise, pop, went a nasty, smelly sack over his head. and he was down. So the trolls capture all 13 of the dwarfs, but Bilbo is still, he doesn't have a sack over him, but his chances aren't good. Trolls, Amy wants to know why trolls are big. Well, if you look into more information about, I think it is in the Two Towers, Treebeard makes a comment about the trolls being made in mockery of the Ents. And the Ents are really big, so the trolls are really big. And I think that's in the Two Towers. So anyway, the trolls are arguing and having a fit, and Gandalf sneaks in. He hears what's going on, and he starts mocking and mimicking the trolls. And then all of a sudden he says, "Dawn take you all and stone be to you, be stoned to you." Said a voice that sounded like William's, but it wasn't, because he was mimicking their voices. For just that moment, the light came over the hill, and there was a mighty twitter in the branches. William never spoke, for he stood turned to stone as he stooped. And Bert and Tom were stuck like rocks as they looked at him. So when the sunlight hits the trolls, they turn to stone. Let's take a look at Tolkien's very own picture here. You can see him over here in the side. Here's the sun coming up over the hill. And look, here we have the dwarves all tied up. And there's little Bilbo, who'd kind of gotten, while they were all fighting, he kind of got knocked up into a bush. And over here in this one, you can also see the dwarves tied up here, and the sunlight hitting the trolls, turning them to stone. What were the sacks made of? These were smelly sacks that they used to put their plunder in. They would go out and raid villages and carry off people to eat and animals to eat, like sheep, and that's what mutton is. Declan wanted to know what mutton is. Mutton is actually like beef. It's just an animal, but when it's alive and walking around, it would be a sheep, an adult sheep. If it was a baby, it would be called a lamb. So anyway, Gandalf comes to save them. Another thing I like are all the details down here that Tolkien puts in, like the big barrel, fine grain, and here's their cooking pot. I love that cooking pot. Okay, so anyway, trolls always have a hoard, a stash of stuff, and these trolls kept it up in a locked cave. So anyway, they come up and they find the cave and they find the keyhole, but they don't have a key. Well, fortunately, Bilbo had seen a key fall out, and he picked it up and put it in his pocket. And then when they discovered that it opens this up, they open up this hoard here. This is actually, this image is from a comic book on The Hobbit. And it shows you, look at all the bones down here, because they just gnaw bones and throw them down. And they just kept everything in here. It's like old laundry. I wondered, like, what's this? They saved a stick, nice stick. But they also had barrels of food and so on and so forth. And here you can see a couple of weapons and a shield. All sorts of things were included in here. Here's some chest, so on and so forth. So they had the key, and they opened it up, and among all of this stuff were several swords of various makes, shapes, and sizes. Two caught their eyes particularly because of the beautiful scabbards and jeweled hilts. Gandalf and Thorin each took one of these, and Bilbo took a knife and a leather sheath. It would have only made a tiny pocket knife for a troll, but it was as good as a short sword for the hobbit. "These look like good blades," said the wizard, half drawing them out and looking at them curiously. "They were not made by any troll, nor by any smith among men in these parts and days. But when we can read the runes on them, we shall know more about them." So the scabbard is the sleeve that goes over the sword, and those were, they saw them, they were just beautiful, so they knew these were special swords. They pulled them out. The hilt, that's the handle you hold on to, They were covered with jewels. And then when they looked at the blades actually had runes carved on them, but Gandalf couldn't read those runes. But he knew that they were special swords because not only were they beautiful, but they had runes on them. And with the runes often would tell the story of the sword. They would carve it on. When he found the key, I want to show you this key because I forgot to tell you that there came a map with the map. There came a key from Thor's map. He also had a key. And see these little notches on there? I don't know if I have it set up because I can't see my camera. But these little notches, those are the wards, the key wards. This is actually the key to get into my apartment. So I pulled it off my keychain, but these little bumps here are called wards, and those are the things that if they line up just right, it will turn the lock and cause it to open. So key wards right there. Let's see what other kinds of questions we have here. What was that pot made out of? I imagine the pot was probably a metal pot. They probably stole it from one of the villages that they raided. And how does Tolkien draw so well? Actually, it was quite the thing. When Tolkien was growing up, everyone learned to draw. And people would go on their trips. Like if they went on vacation, they didn't have a camera. They would take along a sketch pad and they would do drawings. And so I rather imagine that Tolkien just had training in art from probably the time he was a small child and just drew things for his own pleasure for the most part. Let's see, I don't want to miss any questions. Do trolls eat dragons or have things from dragons? I don't think that trolls would be eating dragons because dragons are quite formidable. But have things from dragons. I can imagine if they had found an event, because dragons like to mound everything up and lay on top of it and have this big hoard of treasure. I can see that if they found an abandoned pile of treasure, if that dragon had died or been killed and nobody came to collect the treasure, they would take that. And when the trolls hid in the cave during the day, would the reflection from one of the weapons turn them to stone? No, it was only daylight that would turn them to stone. And what are runes? Runes are just a way of writing, just like our alphabet. It's just an ancient alphabet. And if you look, especially in Scandinavian countries where they do archaeology, you will see runes written on all sorts of different kinds of stones because they're telling stories. What do the trolls eat? Wolves. I wonder about that. I don't think they were friends with the wolves, so they may have eaten wolves. Dragons, bigger than trolls. I think dragons are, for the most part, bigger than trolls. I don't know that, you have to, the biggest dragon was mentioned in the Silmarillion, and he was really like spaceship size, all the way down to small ones that didn't have wings, like big Komodo dragons. Probably some could even be, I'd imagine, bigger than that. But there were smaller ones that were walking along. And how do you kill a dragon? Well, we'll just have to wait and see, won't we, Declan? I don't know if he can. Let's see if he does it. What size would a hobbit sword be? Well, if a hobbit is between under 4 feet tall, you would want to have a sword that would fit that person. Do the trolls turn back into trolls? No, they do not. Once they're hit by sunlight, they are permanently stone. Permanently stone. That's why they have to have a place to hide during the day. Let's take a look at our journal questions here and what you should be drawing in your journal. The company on the road. Well, we talked about the long trip that they had. They went through lands where the people spoke strangely. They went through lands that were deserted. They went through rainstorms. One of their ponies got lost their baggage got lost in the water. they started out at the Green Dragon in Hobbiton, or in Bywater. That's a pretty nice place. So whenever you're sketching the company on the road, you decide where you want to pick in the storyline so far. And then what in the message the dwarves left for Bilbo. We'll talk about that in a moment. Then using for inspiration, these images that we've seen, I want you to sketch the trolls turned into stone. And also answer, how was the company saved from the trolls? So let's take a look here at what was in the message. Now, they left the note for Bilbo on the mantle under his clock. When Gandalf came in and said, "What? You should be gone." And Bilbo said, like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You didn't dust the mantle today. You're such a terrible housekeeper." Well, I'll tell you, I'm not a terrible housekeeper, and I don't think I dust my mantle every morning. So anyway, he gets the letter out, and the dwarves are thanking him for his hospitality, and they also thank him for his offer of professional assistance as a burglar. And they also give him directions to meet the dwarves at 11 a.m. sharp at the Green Dragon Inn in Bywater. So that's what's in the message they left. Oh, that didn't go the right way. There we go. Gandalf, were they saved? Well, it's obviously Gandalf saved them, but you have to, think about it all the way through as you're writing your answer. First, Gandalf had wandered off. Nobody knew where he was. And then Gandalf came back and he saw what was going on. And so he sneaks into the camp unseen. And then Gandalf mimics the trolls, causes them to have this big argument with one another. And they argue so much, the sun comes up and turns the trolls to stone. I see I have a few more questions here. So let's take a look at that. Do the trolls eat the birds? I think trolls will eat just about anything they can get. Were the goblins at peace with the trolls? That is an excellent question, Will. I am not sure about that. I don't know that I've ever read anything about goblins and trolls either working together or goblins and trolls fighting one another. So that's something that we're going to have to find out about. Excellent question. Thank you, Will. Would a troll kill a dragon? Amy wants to know that. I think that a troll might try to kill a dragon if the dragon had something the troll wanted. I don't think the troll would be successful. And Andrew wants to know is how old do the trolls grow? I think trolls are pretty much ageless. I don't think they age because they were made in mockery of something that is also ageless. Very, very, very old. Okay, question on the germ sketches. Could we draw different places in sections and have the company running through those sections? Declan, I think that that is a fabulous idea. I think that anything you decide to do in your journal to help you show your mind movie that you're making by reading the book is going to be excellent. And even if you don't think you're a good artist, I know you are, because whenever you start thinking about your mind movie, things will just start coming out, and it's okay. Was Bilbo let out of the bag? Actually, Bilbo was never in a bag. He did not get captured. He got kind of bumped up and flew up into the trees. And how old was Thorin? CJ, I'd have to actually look that up. I have notes here in the back of my book, because that is a common question. If you're a middle schooler, that's a common middle school question. And I have it written down in the back of the book, but I didn't pull that out and put it into the slide. So I will make a note for myself to look up his age. And then the other thing that I need to know is, were the goblins at peace with the trolls? Well, we are at the end of our hour. I'm hoping that everyone had a really good time. I know that I'm a little bit lumpy on learning to do this. I've never done a slideshow like this before to present. Usually if I'm in front of you in the classroom, I have like maps and charts and things, and I can walk back and forth and point them out. But I don't have that, so we have the slideshow. And thank you for bearing with me and helping me get all of these things. presented to you. Professor Olson, are you there? Oh, wait.
Excellent. Yes, I am. I am here. Very good. Thanks everybody so much. Thanks for your great questions, everybody. I've been the one, and sometimes I've answered a couple of your questions in type. I've been the one typing here in the background while Ms. Binkley was talking, and answering many of your wonderful questions. By the way, my opinion, Ms. Binkley, on the troll versus goblin question, which is indeed an excellent question. You can see some places where trolls and goblins seem to be working together or fighting together, especially in the Lord of the Rings. But you see, they have to be forced to do that. So when the Dark Lord is forcing them to work together, orcs and goblins and trolls, they don't work together very well naturally. They all tend to fight each other all the time, it seems. But it's the will of their masters that forces them to get along and work together. So I think left to themselves, the goblins and the trolls would probably fight. I don't think they'd be at peace with much of anybody. But it's a great question.
I think it's a fabulous question.
Yeah.
And then, do you happen to know off the top of your head, Professor Olson, how old Thorin was at the beginning of this?
I can't remember exactly. Something like 250. He's over 200. I'm quite sure. He's quite an aged dwarf.
Yeah, he was quite young whenever Erebor was attacked.
Yeah. He was a kid back then.
And it was at least 100 years ago that Gandalf got the map from his father.
Yeah, his father disappeared 100 years ago last Thursday, and that was some time after the fall of Erebor. So yeah, I think he was a young dwarf, which means, if I recall, he was like 50 or 60 or 70 in that range when Erebor died. So he's still young for a dwarf. It wasn't like, wasn't like a little kid or anything. But he was a young dwarf. So yeah, if I recall correctly, I'd have to look it up too to get it exactly, but I'm pretty sure he's around 250.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody for coming, and I will see you at the same time tomorrow. The sun is just now going down here in Rome.
That's right.
So I have the next slideshow ready, and with practice, I think we're all going to get, I'm going to get much better at advancing my slides.
I know, that was fun. And so for everybody who's listening, if you don't have a copy of the packet, I know there were a couple of you who didn't receive a copy of the packet. Make sure to fill out the family registration form. That's when you get the copy of the packet. And if you have filled out the form and for some reason don't have the packet, go ahead and send an email to camp, C-A-M-P, @signumu.org. It's on the event page, the Hobbit Camp event page on the signumuniversity.org website as well. So if you go ahead and send us an email, we'll make sure that you get a packet before next time. We'll get that right away, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay, and just remember, as you're working on your journal, this is your journal. If you decide you need to make your picture, the picture's only this big, and you want a full-size picture, make a full-size picture. If you want to write more, get some more paper. It's fine. This is your journal. You are the one who's traveling through Middle-earth with the company. And so this is your journal of your trip. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.